Effectively recruiting volunteers is important for the sustainability of your organization. In this first section, we will review the elements of recruiting, which include advertising, onboarding, and training. Advertising for volunteer support is just as important as advertising for your organization. Not only does this style of advertising bring awareness to your organization, but it also produces networking opportunities and showcases your interest and value in volunteers. There are two primary ways you can advertise: physically and virtually. Physical methods of advertising include encouraging your current volunteers to recruit friends and family, hanging posters, and making announcements at community events in person. Virtual methods include posting on social media accounts, sending emails, hosting virtual information sessions, and creating a volunteer information section on your organization's website. The following are questions to consider when advertising for volunteer engagement. What advertising methods does your organization already use? What advertising methods do you think your organization could try out? Which advertising methods does your organization excel at? And finally, what challenges does your organization face when it comes to advertising for volunteer engagement? After gaining volunteers, onboarding is often the first time you will meet your volunteers in person. Onboarding is typically a part of the training process and is the most important initial interaction because it allows you to set the stage for how relationships and dynamics will look like between volunteers in your organization. While it may seem like a minimal and short part of introducing your organization, it is a heavy influencer of dedication and rapport built between the volunteers and your organization. Most onboarding methods include providing your organization's mission statement and values, and ensuring all required paperwork and processes are understood and taken care of. However, creating an environment that is welcoming, inviting, and kind, utilizing informal activities and diverse, equitable, and inclusive resources is just as important as the following methods. The following are questions to consider when onboarding volunteers. How does your organization communicate their missions and values to volunteers? What kind of environment does your organization create while onboarding? And finally, does your organization find ways to resonate with volunteers' passions and interests in the process? After onboarding, training is the final process for attaining a full recruited volunteer. Your organization most likely already has a training process. However, paying attention to and improving the structure, inclusiveness, and consistency within your training process is vital to the success of your volunteers. The critical information you should include in your training session are general mandatory information, such as scheduling, organizational processes and required paperwork, expectations and repercussions, providing on-hand demonstrations and experiences, as well as hosting a time for connecting with your volunteers. The following are questions to consider when training volunteers. What are the rules and regulations? What are the specific tasks and responsibilities of volunteers? What are the surrounding community's cultural, social, and traditional values? What does scheduling and communication look like within your organization? What is okay and not okay to do as a volunteer? What commitment does your organization ask from volunteers? And finally, are there aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion addressed in the training process? When we focus on the full process of recruiting volunteers more intentionally and relationally, we begin to further our efforts of sustaining volunteer engagement, which allow us to collect and utilize consistent volunteer data for further support.